I remember the night I started my new job as a security guard at Sentinel Manor. It was a chilly evening, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows across the old estate. As I approached the towering gates, a shiver ran down my spine. Something about the place felt off, but I brushed it off as nerves. Mr. Fletcher, the head of security, greeted me with a stern nod. He handed me a set of keys and a flashlight before disappearing into the darkness. Alone now, I hesitated for a moment before pushing open the heavy gates and stepping into the grounds. The manor loomed before me, its windows like empty eyes staring into the night. I swallowed hard and began my patrol, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. As I made my rounds, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the old floorboards sent my heart racing, and I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder. But there was nothing there, just the empty halls of the manor. Suddenly, I heard a noise coming from the end of the corridor, a soft whisper, barely audible over the pounding of my own heart. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. "Hello?" I called out, but there was no response. Summoning all my courage, I crept toward the source of the sound. It led me to a door slightly ajar, a dim light flickering from within. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. The room was filled with old portraits lining the walls, their eyes following me as I moved. In the center of the room stood a figure cloaked in darkness, its features obscured. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure took a step forward, and I saw its eyes glinting in the dim light. Without a word, it reached out a hand toward me, and I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. As I fell to the ground, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but the echo of its laughter ringing in my ears. Terrified, I scrambled to my feet and fled from the room, the echoes of my footsteps reverberating through the empty halls. I never returned to Sentinel Manor after that night, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still hear the whispers and see the glint of those haunting eyes, and I will never go there ever again. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cemetery, I found myself walking through the rows of weathered tombstones. It was a shortcut home, or so I thought, but as darkness settled in, I began to regret my decision. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and decay, and a chill crept down my spine despite the warmth of the day. Each step echoed through the silent graveyard, the sound of my footsteps mingling with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. I tried to focus on the path ahead, but the shadows seemed to dance and shift, twisting into shapes that played tricks on my mind. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest as I navigated through the graves. Suddenly, I heard a noise, a soft rustling coming from the darkness. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I listened. But there was nothing, just the eerie silence of the graveyard at night. Shaking off my unease, I continued on my way, but the feeling of being watched lingered like a ghostly presence. I couldn't shake the sensation that eyes were upon me, following my every move from the shadows. As I reached the center of the cemetery, a thick fog rolled in, obscuring my vision and sending a shiver down my spine. I stumbled forward, my heart racing as I struggled to find my way through the dense mist. And then I saw it, a figure in the shadows, its eyes gleaming. My blood ran cold as I realized what it was. A specter from beyond the grave, haunting the cemetery in search of souls to claim. With a scream, I turned and fled, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the night. But no matter how fast I ran, the specter was always one step behind, its presence getting closer and closer. I burst through the cemetery gates and into the safety of the streetlights, gasping for breath as I collapsed onto the pavement. The specter vanished into the darkness, leaving behind nothing but the chill of its presence. As I picked myself up and continued on my way home, I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay hidden in the shadows of the grave. But one thing was certain: I would never take that shortcut through the cemetery again.
I was on to my parents' home. They lived quite far from where I lived, and it was late at night. And I never should have taken the midnight Route 13, but it was the quickest way home. The clock struck 12 when I got into my car, the air thick with an eerie silence. Ignoring the warnings I'd heard about this cursed road, I pressed on, the darkness swallowing the edges of the highway. The headlights cut through the night, illuminating the empty stretch of road ahead. Shadows danced on the side of the road, playing tricks on my tired mind. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as a sense of unease settled in my stomach. As I drove deeper into the night, strange things began to happen. Shapes flitted across the road, disappearing into the darkness before I could make sense of them. I thought it was my mind playing tricks. Unnerved. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered on still. Then I saw her. A figure standing on the side of the road, her form bathed in the sickly glow of the moon. She raised a hand, thumb extended, hitchhiking in the dead of night. I found it strange, and every instinct screamed at me to keep driving. But something compelled me to stop. As she climbed into the passenger seat, a chill swept through the car, chilling me to the bone. Her eyes, pools of darkness, bore into mine as she whispered directions. I followed her instructions, each turn taking me further into the heart of the unknown. The road stretched on endlessly, the trees closing in around. Suddenly, the woman vanished, leaving behind nothing but a cold, empty seat. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized I was alone on the midnight Route 13, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. Desperation set in as I tried to find my way back to familiar territory, but the road twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the abyss. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, whispering secrets too terrible to comprehend. Time lost all meaning as I drove on, haunted by the specters of my own fear. I was so worried, my mind was so confused. But then the darkness lifted, and I found myself on the outskirts of town. The first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. I was so confused, did I imagine this or what? What's going? But one thing for sure, it must have been real. Well, it felt real, but what I know is I'll never drive again on Route 13 during midnight.